This is the April 24th regular meeting of the Parks and Recreation Commission, on TV 79. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. Before we go to the approval of the minutes, and then we'll go into our main presentation, I want to welcome Tiara Hester, who's our new member.
Thank you.
Welcome. Here
Welcome.
for you, first meeting. She's a newbie.
Yeah, she got the nice
She's our
thick,
newbie.
she got the nice thick packet for the first
Yes, I
meeting.
know, right? So we're glad that gets us back to full complement again, so very glad to have you on board.
Thank you.
We got a lot to absorb tonight. Good luck with that. We also have, as in the audience tonight, members of the Pear Tree Point Building Committee. Mike Scrow is co-chair. He's also on the commission, along with Randy Tankus, who's hanging back there, and then other members of the committee are here to listen and observe this evening. And that doesn't introduce everybody. Would you like me to introduce Jim
Just
Collins?
special.
He's our assistant director. Okay. So we'll introduce Jim as well. So we will do the minutes very quickly, and then we will go into the meeting portion on the Pear Tree building project. Okay, so hopefully everybody has had a chance to review the minutes from March 20th. Did anybody have any questions or comments?
I didn't review them, I didn't
No more comments, okay. Okay, the only question I came is on page 3 on Highland Farms. And I wasn't at the meeting, so maybe this is right. It said we could potentially start in December. Did you mean December? Here.
No.
That's,
No, I would say potentially start in the summer.
In the summer, okay. Okay, that was the only thing. That's the only thing I picked up on. Oh, and then the meeting notice for this said it was room 119. Obviously, it's a catalog.
Okay.
Okay, anything else from anybody? Okay, then we need a motion to accept the minutes. Susan? Second, Mary Louise? All in favor? Okay, and don't vote because I wasn't there? You weren't there?
I wasn't there.
Lucy wasn't there?
I was there.
You were there?
Yeah.
You approved. Okay. Okay, good.
Can you, who voted, who approved? I'm sorry.
Okay, anti?
And Mary Louise.
Okay.
And it should be as amended.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I just request in the future that the text doesn't change size halfway through because I didn't have my glasses
Yes.
on me and then I couldn't
Yes, I
read the
did
second half.
I did
my
notice
glasses.
that. So you got
So
smaller.
please be
Okay.
consistent with
Welcome,
that.
Jamie.
Yes, yes, I did notice the font got smaller.
Thank you.
And the second part is a very challenging font.
Yes.
Great. All right, the next item on the agenda is we have with us tonight representatives from Neil Huff Associates and Weston and Sampson. And this is the commission's opportunity to meet the firms that have been selected to lead the building committee through the renovation project down at Pear Tree Point Beach. We thought it would be great for the commission to have a chance to meet and chat with them. Mike put together a nice packet of information, and maybe Mike, you could just walk through very quickly, not page by page,
Sure.
but just, I think the key focus and probably starting off point is to review the design objectives that were provided, as amended, that were provided to the team. So Neil, you should probably come up, and where did Rachel, there's Nana, no hiding back there, you guys gotta come.
Front and center.
Front and center.
Those two little white chairs, front and center.
Maybe it's an introduction.
Really, it's
You want
nice.
to say
Yes.
Would you like to move to the couch?
Might fall asleep. If you could introduce yourselves for everybody, that would be great. I know the set up thing could be awkward.
Sure. I'm Neil Haupt from Neil Haupt Architects here in town. I'd also like to introduce two of my associates, Brian O'Connor, who will act as project manager, and Rob Metzger, who will be part of the design team.
Okay, and I'm Rochelle McKnight. I'm from Weston and Sampson, landscape architect and arborist. Here with me.
And civil engineering.
Civil engineering, yes, the firm is civil engineering. I am not an engineer.
Great. So as Lori mentioned, I did circulate a packet of just some general information, with the exception of a couple of bullets that I'll go over. All of it has been otherwise circulated through the proceedings of the Pear Tree Beach Building Committee. And in terms of objectives, I'll do a quick just run through of these, just as a reminder. And of course, the objective here is for the commission to have an opportunity to chat with the architects and the engineering team and kind of just weigh in. I guess it's an opportunity for Neil to just familiarize himself with the folks of the commission as well. So these objectives actually go back to the master plan, and the master plan was finalized back in January of 2018. And I'll just do a quick run through. Lori, would you like to do
Yeah, I
a quick
think
run through?
it's good for all
Yeah.
listening audience.
Once again, extracting out of the master plan, the list of bullets are as follows. So a new elevated bathhouse concession building in the existing location. And there were two concepts provided through the master plan. There was concept A, concept B. Concept A had a bathhouse and concession facility in a different location at the beach. And concept B essentially has those buildings in essentially the same footprint as the existing buildings. So new elevated bathhouse concession in the existing location. The addition of an outdoor dining area or deck around the concession building. The possibility, now I'm going to also reflect, I'll read these, but then I'll also share with you guys that there were some changes or some amendments to these objectives kind of as we were progressing through the early stages of the building committee. So the third item here is the possibility of a year-round concession and facilities to support catered events to maximize return on investment. And then the add of 2 multi-purpose rooms to the bathhouse that can be rented out for programs, parties, meetings, etc. I'll take a little detour now, and these objectives were sent out with the RFP that was published at the end of November of 2018 as we got kicked off, as activities got kicked off in the building committee. We had some discussions, there was some further discussion with the commission, and these 2 points that I just mentioned, the year-round concession stand and the addition of 2 buildings, two multi-purpose rooms were amended, and I'll just share with you now the amendments that were sent out to the RFP around those 2 items. So what was removed from the scope were those 2 items, so I'll just kind of read them once again. So removed from the scope of work was the possibility of a year-round concession facility to support catered events to maximize return on investment, and the addition of 2 multi-purpose rooms to the bathhouse that could be rented out for programs, parties, meetings, etc. Those 2 specific bullet points were removed, and added back was, in their place, the addition of flexible space for community use. So just further clarifying, and then moving along, address the ongoing issues with the boat launch by either fixing or replacing it, add ADA access to the dock, add appropriate elements on both the front and back beaches that prevent dispersal of sand onto the adjoining parking area, in particular during high tide or storm events, the add of a fishing pier coming out of, for those of you who might want to go back and reference, coming out of concept A from the master plan, replacing the security guard station with a unit that is ADA compliant, and evaluate the best location that allows cars, boats, and boat trailers to enter, exit without needing to back up onto Pear Tree Point Road. Just a note on that, and Pam, if you'd like to provide a little more detail, but Pam has been proceeding with kind of the replacement of the existing security guard station, which is pretty much rusting in place, and we're replacing that with a new guard station. That's actually underway, and I guess
That had been
targeted
already
for-
previously budgeted the year before, and we felt it was necessary. We had the money in the budget to replace it because the other was in shambles.
Yep. So that's happening outside of the context of the other work that's taking place through the building committee. Raise or re-engineer the parking lot. And then once again, these are items that came out of the master plan that was finalized back in January of 2018. So raise or re-engineer the parking lot to minimize flooding, beach erosion, or beach erosion. Add street fencing and screening on the street side to help prevent sand from going into the road. Update the picnic area, living shoreline restoration, evaluate and analyze options for entrance and egress, enhance and expand the existing area along the road to create a pathway or walkway, add dumpster enclosure, add trees for shade, add improved signage, and add solar energy wherever possible within the bathhouse concession building. There were a couple of other items that were in the recommendations that came through the master plan that were deliberated on by the commission when this list was originally finalized that were not included. And I'll just maybe flip to those quickly if I can. I have a copy. It's a little difficult to read, but I'll try. One is proposed pavilions. Proposed pavilions meant, kind of like fixed structures that look like a large umbrella, that were fixed, that would be kind of positioned along the back beach to provide shade along the back beach. That was removed through discussion that took place at the commission. And then another item that was in the recommendation that was explicitly removed was the addition of, and I'll read it here, accessible boardwalks along the western side of the beach and interpretive restoration signage. So kind of the operative aspect of that is there was a thought of actually installing a boardwalk along that back beach, kind of adjacent between the parking lot and the sand area. And that was removed. So that's the extent of the objectives. And Lori, would you like me to just quickly touch on some of the things that we've learned in the
I would say the highlights.
Yeah. And then just quickly, since the formation of the committee, there's some important things that have taken place. Of course, you're now aware that we've selected the architectural firm. We have a signed contract with the team of Houck Associates and Weston Sampson. We have also completed an updated, revised survey of the beach area. The prior survey, I'm not even sure what the date of that was. It goes back quite some time. So there's now a complete and updated survey of the beach area for all involved to be working with. The other important aspects that we've learned now is that the entire beach area is in a VE15 zone, and that's a reference to the FEMA designation, so FEMA's VE15 zone. And essentially what that refers to is there's a definition called base flood elevation. The base flood elevation is FEMA's projection of the height of storm surge for a 100-year flood, or a 100-year storm, let's call it that. So essentially what FEMA is saying is for a 100-year storm, their anticipation is that the surge in this particular area would be upwards of potentially 15 feet. And what FEMA calls for then is any new building that's built, or any new structures that are built in a VE15 zone need to be, the kind of the bottom support structure of a building in a VE15 zone has to be roughly 2 feet above the 15-foot level. So we're essentially talking about, essentially the first floor being 17 feet above sea level. So that was important for us to learn and confirm. The existing parking lot and the existing bathhouse and concession area are roughly at elevation 7. So what that implies now is if we were to build any new buildings in that area, we're talking about going up roughly 10 feet from the ground level that we're all familiar with when we look at the existing buildings. FEMA also has what's called a 50% rule. And this is relevant in the context of if we have any intention of doing any renovation to the existing buildings. So what FEMA calls for is that if you're intending to renovate any existing buildings in a VE15 zone, you can only renovate, your allowable spend is only upwards of 50% of the value of the appraised value of the existing structures. And I'll come back to what that really means in the case of our specific buildings. There's also a 3-year look-back period, so it's not as though you can kind of spend that money every year. You can only spend that every 3 years. So if you spent it 2 years ago, you've got to wait for another year before you can go ahead and spend that. So they're quite strict in terms of what they're allowing for in terms of renovations to existing buildings. And so just to come back to the 50% rule, so once again, we're in the VE15 zone. All these rules apply to us. We had some earlier information on this, but we've gotten updated numbers now. So essentially the restroom is the front building and the kiosk is the back, the closest to the water. The restroom has an appraised value including a canopy that hangs off of that, of roughly $60,000. So if we wanted to renovate that building, the budget that would be allowable to us would be $30,000, roughly $30,000. If we were to go up, essentially we'd be in violation if we spent more than $30,000, unless we were to get a variance. And what we've also learned is that FEMA is quite strict in terms of guidelines to municipalities in terms of giving variances out. And then the kiosk, which is with the concession area, the kitchen area in it, has an appraised value of $132,930, which means we'd be allowed improvements up to about $66,000 or $67,000. So these are things that we've learned since in the process of the work that we've done now on the committee since we've been going, and they obviously have bearing on the work that the team that we've brought in to do the design work wants to take into consideration, and that's all I had at this point.
Okay, thank you, that's a great summary. So it's clear that there's some real challenges, with the parcel being fully in the flood zone, and then the various regulations that we're going to need to comply with. So it's going to be a really interesting project.
I have a
Yes.
quick question about the guard station. That's happening now, so this flood elevation, has that been taken into account for the renovations to the guard station?
I've gotten approvals for everything from ZBA to P&Z, ARB, so we've taken account of all those things, I guess.
But one of the key elements of that is that the little shack or hut is movable. So the
Okay,
idea would be
Yes, it's
that
not permanent.
with a prediction of a storm, it can, I guess, be forklifted and
Right, and I think that also is a key element because perhaps you all may come up with something that you feel is a better design. So although we are moving ahead with it today, seeing that it's movable doesn't limit us.
So, Neil, I know you had the opportunity to get down and visit the structures in the last
Yes.
week or so. I don't know if you have any opening sort of thoughts, comments. I know you're really still formulating, and it's premature to ask you to say, and we wouldn't want to say at this point what you're kind of thinking in design options, but just any opening comments or thoughts
Well,
that you'd like to
existing
share.
structures are pretty bare bones. And starting with the bathroom component, my first thought was you might be able to replace fixtures and clean things up a bit and get away with spending $30,000. I don't know. We want to look at that. But my question, I think, for the committee was, does the existing layout provide the functions that you all want for that structure? For instance, there are 2 showers there now. Does anyone use showers anymore? Sometimes,
There's just outdoor showers.
Right,
some
so those will be
places.
the questions you'll be discussing with the committee as you meet and go through.
And so our approach will be to, we're going to begin design work tomorrow, and we're going to look at ways to keep those structures and then add on to them, if that's possible. And then also look at what a brand new building would look like and the implications of it meeting the FEMA regs.
So, I just want to be crystal clear, since we did Big Beach together many years ago.
I remember.
Remember that? Oh, God, dating myself. So, if you renovate, you don't have to worry about raising the elevation, right? Is that what you're saying? Like, if you did the 30,000 on the back restroom, you don't
Yes,
have
as
to
long as you
just
don't spend more
right.
than that threshold amount.
So, but new buildings, it doesn't matter, then you have to meet that threshold. And it doesn't matter your budget, in theory, within reason.
That's my understanding.
Could I just add one other important point that it touches on what you just raised, and that is the issue of ADA accessibility. So with the existing, let's just talk about the bathroom facility, the bathhouse, the bathroom facilities. Those are at ground level. If we found some way creatively to retain that building, what that does is it gives us bathrooms at ground level. If the other option is that building goes away, and we're talking about a new building at potentially 10 foot higher than the existing, or 12 foot higher than the existing ground. For ADA accessibility, we're talking about at least one of the options might be a ramp. I mean, in other situations, you could be talking about elevators and things like that. But what it does mean, though, is that it would have to be ADA accessible and compliant with ADA requirements. And it would mean that you're talking about bathrooms that are up 10 foot above the existing buildings. So I think that's just one factor to take into consideration.
This is
I guess what I'm bringing to the commission potentially it's a choice between bathrooms at ground level or not, is one factor I think that is an important one.
I think this is going to be a very challenging project because of there's just a whole host of limitations.
Follow my point.
Yeah, I get it, no, it's excellent.
And there are
Are
certain-
we ADA now with the building? I mean, just out of curiosity.
Well, we're at ground level, so we're ADA accessible
But
today.
like, the widths, the use of the sinks, I mean, you know, you
good
don't, so
point.
you know exactly what I'm talking about.
I
You
don't know, I
Could someone wheel their wheelchair in there?
Our first step is going to be to field measure the existing structure and draw a computer-drawn template floor plan. And then we'll know whether it meets ADA requirements.
If we do the renovation, you still have to be ADA.
If you do a renovation, believe the way the code is written, is that you have to set aside 20% of the monies you spend for the renovation on improving accessibility. So in this case, if we were limited to 30,000, you'd have to spend 6,000 of that toward making the building more accessible. Now, it may be fully accessible now, I don't know.
My guess would be that was fully ADA. It's an older.
I'm trying to think, do you know when it was built?
Mid-70s, I think.
That was.
I mean, the last time we've done something with that building was, I know we had to do something with electricity because all the conduits were kind of, they rust or some kind of issue. We didn't want to put a ton of money because we thought after we did Wheat Beach, we'd go right out to Pear Tree.
74. The building was built in 74.
I mean, there are certain components like the bathrooms that one could argue could stay at the ground level, and if they flood and they get wet, then they get wet, because it's a concrete block building, and you really don't have any materials that could be significantly damaged. But things like a concession where you have $100,000 in cooking equipment, you don't want that to be subject to flood. So, those components probably do want to go up. So then the challenge for us is to determine how does one connect the building at grade with part of the building that's 10 feet above grade and make it look right, function well, and integrate. Possible.
Commission members, do you have questions?
No, the only thing, I guess, do you have any premise on why the building should be moved? Possibly that we should just consider conceptually, beyond, obviously, there's a financial involvement, but what are there sort of top priorities we should be considering?
Well, first of all, we haven't begun design work, so
Yeah.
that question, I'm not sure I'm prepared to answer yet. I will say, however, that when we were putting together our proposal for this project, we did look at the two master plan concepts that were done by Weston and Sampson. And we rather like keeping the structure in its present location, whether it's a new building or not, for a couple of reasons. One, you're really a hinge point between the two beaches, so it can easily serve both beaches. Secondly, I think by having it a little further out, it doesn't block some of the views of the water as one is driving down the road. So whether it's a building at grade or a building on top of it, I don't know that that isn't the best place for it where it is now. So, of course, we're going to explore that, but our first responses were that.
I think another potential benefit of keeping the building in that location is that in our design, we had an overlook deck area adjacent to the living wetlands that we were proposing, or the living shoreline condition. And that would be a great way to reestablish habitat and get some shoreline buffer happening without having the public directly in it. We could build sort of this overlooking deck, and people could enjoy it without being in the weeds, literally.
Yeah, Michelle, maybe you can talk about that, because I know we tend to focus on the building,
Sure.
and everything's just the building, but a very big piece of this project is preservation of the parcel against, in the last few months, and I'll talk about more later in my chairman's report, but I've attended a number of meetings over the last few months, having to do with, rising sea levels and coastal preservation and such, and that's a key issue for this parcel, because we know it can flood right up to the road. So, the work that we're gonna be doing around mitigating the flooding and working with any wetlands or whatever is equally important. I don't want to kind of get totally overrun by discussion of the building. So maybe for the benefit of anybody who's listening, you could give a sort of a layman's or a definition, like this term living shoreline is, I've been hearing it a lot now.
Yes.
Maybe you could really talk about what that means and why it's important to a project like this.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been doing quite a bit of work in the shorelines. We're doing work in Boston and in Kingston right now along the Hudson River. And the thing that we're finding more and more is that we have a couple of different options to try to stabilize a shoreline and prevent flooding. And one of those options is hardened engineered conditions. So that's the revetments, your walls, retaining walls, large boulders, things like that, riprap. And then we have the option of living shorelines. So typically what that means is we try to replicate the shore potentially as it used to look before development happened. And it can be very tricky, especially because shorelines, when they used to look that way, weren't anticipating this massive sea level rise that we're looking at now. So we have to do two things. We have to really understand the potential elevation of floodwaters, and we need to design to that. So we're looking at dunes, we're looking at a mix of riprap, so we do some of the stones with interdispersed vegetation. And the reason that we do that, and what we're finding is with all of the studies, especially wave action and scouring, if you can reestablish vegetation, it creates a type of roughness. So when the waves hit the shore, they've got a buffer, they've got something that they're flowing into, and they have water absorption happening, right? Whereas if you just have a hard engineered structure, those waves are hitting and then they're going back out into the water body, and a lot of times what can happen is that wave action then travels down the ocean or down the shore, and it starts to affect other places. And so in most of the shoreline work that we're doing in terms of permitting, we're finding that it's a lot easier to try to get living shorelines because they know that the wave action is going to come in and hopefully at least try to stay put versus traveling downstream and affecting somebody else. The other benefit to having living shorelines is that you can potentially provide a lot of habitat restoration. So some of the species that were previously extirpated or aren't finding habitat in these like just straight sandy beach conditions are more likely to be able to reestablish in an area. So on a permitting side, again, that's very attractive. So that's a lot of the reason that we're doing this. But it's very challenging because those sea level rise numbers are daunting and definitely hard.
Thank you, that was really
Yeah, very
helpful.
informative.
And it's just such an important piece of this project that we love your buildings, we love, you designed the building that we're sitting in right now, but I don't want to lose sight of that that's an equally important part of this project.
I
I
agree.
want to make sure that we're talking about that.
I just learned recently that from somebody that we work with, who has been part of a horseshoe tagging project, that for decades or probably centuries, that horseshoe crabs come
Yes.
and lay eggs on this beach that we're talking about.
Wow, yeah.
And so she's been involved with part of that nighttime tagging project to see, that I'm sure that's been affected by it. I don't know, maybe perhaps she can talk to us later.
Yeah, absolutely. If any kind of information like that, please let us know, because we aren't in the design phase either. We know that something like this needs to happen, but we need all those little elements of information because we want to make sure we're designing to preserve that type of ecosystem.
Great, thank you, that was really helpful.
Sure.
Commission members, do you have other questions for our professionals while they're here? So So just reminder that the rough timeline is you said you're starting design tomorrow, and I'm just forgetting exactly what the estimated timeline is in terms of.
So I believe that when we spoke last week, we thought that we would meet again mid-May. Can't remember if May 15th was the date, somewhere around there. And we would present initial design concepts. And that would be to the building committee.
To the building committee.
Not to the
That's
commission.
fine.
So we'll make some headway between now and then.
That's correct, May 15th.
May 15th.
Are you gonna do, one of the things that you did that was wonderful when we did the first time with the beach was you did different concepts. Are you going towards that direction again? Because there were very different styles
Yes.
that you presented to us, and I thought that was really great. Because I think there was also a cost component to the different styles too, and that helped us, really make that decision. But I thought that was one of the things we liked working with you, is having different options.
You have a good memory.
It was so much a part of my life then, and get the result, you know what I mean?
I mean, the message we've gotten from the representative from the Board of Finance who's on the building committee is that the Board of Finance posture now is to design to objectives, not to design to cost. So they don't want the committee feeling, okay, let's find the cheapest way to fix this. People just like create the designs that meet the objectives, settle on that, and then come forward. So I think the town.
We didn't pick the cheap one, just in case
Yeah.
you wondered. We did it, so.
Great, thank you. So question members, do you have any more? Nope. Okay.
Okay.
All right, thank you for
Thank
coming.
you
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Looking
Forward to working with you.
Yes.
Yes.
Building committee members, we do have some other business, but we will have a public comment section later. If you want to address the commission during that time, you're welcome to stay. I know, it's really The next item on the agenda is picking up from a topic that Pam brought up at the last meeting, which was whether the commission wants to consider imposing a smoking ban on all of the cars. I did watch the tape, and I know there were varying views on the topic. Pam sent out additional information for review in the packet that she was able to gather, getting the parks tobacco-free. Yes,
Yeah, apparently there's a time for public comments, but
yes.
I think a lot of the public comment revolves around the topic that was just finished. So would this be an appropriate time to make public comments?
Well, usually the public comment would be on anything we talked about in the agenda, not just this.
So we would need to wait to the end?
Yes.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I was in train of thought. Okay. So Pam circulated additional information on the topic. So I just wanted a little bit of a follow-up conversation on people's thoughts and whether it's, something that you want to, not necessarily this evening, whether you should have a public hearing on would be one way to go.
Well,
Whether or not.
I just wanted to add that after last meeting, or during last meeting, Erica especially agreed that we should try to find out some more information in Connecticut. So, I fell upon this. That was quite interesting. It's Ellington, Colchester, East Lyme, Montville, Wallingford, and Wyndham, as well as 839 other U.S. cities. So I think this was a good backup, that it's something that is relevant and is happening, and to the safety of the public. And so I think it's current, and I think it's a subject that we really should, I'm not saying that I think we should make any changes today, but I do think it's really worthy of continuing this discussion and making possible change.
Pam, the document you provided is so well laid out about all of this involved.
Yeah.
And it's kind of really compelling, to be honest with you. And the fact that all this research is in one place, I think it's worth for us to think about, making a change. And I understand, about, rights of individuals also. So maybe doing a public hearing to get other viewpoints
I
of
think it's
people would be the idea, but this is pretty compelling,
Yeah. I mean, there's more children in this town than adults, right? So,
I saw that.
Yeah. I mean, there are parks, and we are stewards of the town, and want the best for all of our parks and the best for our residents. It's my take that we want the best parks we possibly can have.
There's a ton of information on the internet, of course, as you guess, about other municipalities that are moving towards kind of smoke-free zones and parks. And New York City is an example. New Jersey, I think, is just at statewide level, just going forward with smoke-free beaches. And so, I wasn't sure when you first brought it up, but obviously we wouldn't be alone in doing this. I mean, we'd be a company of other municipalities. The other thing I read about is that in many of these cases, if there is, as an example, a beach that's designated as smoke-free, there are areas that are set aside typically. In some cases, in New Jersey, I think it's like 15% of the total area of the beach that's set aside. In other municipalities, it's parking lots, as an example, that are areas where people will be allowed to smoke. So if and when we get to that point, I think that is something to take into consideration. The thought of allowing some designated area for folks.
Today in Darien, the library does that.
Okay.
They have a designated area outside.
Yeah. And then I would just go back to, I like the idea of a public hearing, and a lot of work that goes into that, but I also think maybe you might want to consider, just some type of appropriate way of sensitizing people to some of the information that's here. Like, once again, finding cigarette butts, in the sand is pretty disgusting. I'm not a smoker, the thought of my little grandchildren kind of running through the beach and sticking their hand in the sand and coming up with a handful of butts is really not very nice. So, the thought of, in a way that we kind of approached it with dogs on the beach, making folks aware it's a privilege, and to take some responsibility. So, it's almost like the campers, I don't know what the saying is, but if you bring it in, you take it out kind of thing.
leave that trace.
Yeah, so just a couple of those, but I think it's worthwhile, and I think it's, the more I'm learning about it, the more I feel it's, maybe there's a way to strike a balance, but it's definitely something that's worthwhile.
The article confines itself mainly to tobacco products. What about vaping? Since that's such a hot item with young people.
That was included in the topic that we listened to, that was a national topic, with different professionals from around the country, and vaping and marijuana.
And marijuana.
And
I believe Los Angeles has just outlawed vaping and marijuana in public beaches, so, yeah. Sorry,
that would be a
Pat.
subject that we would continue to talk about as well.
Continue, or encompass all of them.
Yeah,
Make sure
sure,
we address all of them.
absolutely.
Have there been complaints at the beach regarding this?
I have not received any. Jim, Jamie?
I don't. Mostly what I hear is, I didn't know that you could smoke.
A lot of people that are complaining about it, maybe?
Probably, yeah, I mean,
So
it's
it's
just- I
not-
don't think, it's times change. I mean, it's not, trying to make people smoking as they were 10, 20, 50 years ago, so.
No.
I think most of the concerns are, we didn't even know that you could smoke here,
They
so.
probably used to have a cigarette machine in one of those buildings in
There you go.
the 1950s.
I would also be concerned, although it seems like it's been raining forever, but if we went into more drought conditions, I'd be concerned, for instance, over Woodland Park and Selleck's Woods in terms of, cigarette butts if we have dry conditions.
Good point. We did have a fire,
And we have had a fire there, that's right.
so it was really hard to fight because it was in the middle of the park, and to get into there, it's not the easiest part to.
So that would be concerning as well, because, at some point we'll go back to dry conditions. Or at least a little less wet. Okay. So we could move this and consider having a public hearing.
We could put this on our website, you think that'd be helpful?
I think so, why not?
Because that way the
Just public
public will have a
education.
chance to read it themselves. It was that compelling for
Yeah.
you.
I
It
mean,
would be compelling for the public to
everyone
read
who's
as well.
playing.
I don't know if we need to do it next month or
Let's get it up there.
get it up there.
Yeah, because next month is May, and then we're going into summer.
Yeah, we should do
Yeah.
it to affect the summer.
Next month, when we're doing
Okay. No, we were talking about Eagle Scouts.
Okay, all right, so then we can put on for next month,
Yeah.
over to the summer, okay. Okay, great. That's what we'll do.
Public hearing.
Yes. We'll have a public hearing to the beginning of our agenda
Okay.
next month. And then we would not vote on it, we'd wait
The next meeting.
and
June.
vote on it in June. And then the Parks and Rec Committee of the RTM would have a chance to discuss, correct, and come back with any feedback.
Really?
You need to have an ordinance, I mean, you gotta have it written out for the rest of review.
We don't just talk about these things?
We talk about things, but it's really, the devil's in the details, isn't it?
Okay.
We have to get approval from the RTM for that, this stuff? I didn't think we did. Like, we never did it for the dogs.
Doesn't
We
cost
never.
any money.
I'm not saying it costs money, I'm just thinking about timing.
I think there's a
I
difference
didn't know
between
you
an
did.
ordinance and a policy guideline.
Right,
Right.
right.
If you write a rule or regulation or your policy, that's one thing you do that.
Right, because
If
a
you
town
want to make
ordinance.
it an ordinance where it can be enforced by town officials, then it comes to the RTM and it has to be voted on, and the ordinance has to be written in TGSNA and all that. But it's enforcing your rules and regulations and how and who would police it.
Okay. Thank you.
We're happy to talk about it.
I would put that in agenda, talk about it. Because we would enforce it like we enforce anything else in our parks. We don't have park management, right, park police. So we set forth rules so that we can put them out to the public to follow.
Peer pressure.
All right, so we'll put that on for public hearing next month. Okay. The next thing I want to raise and discuss with the commission are the friends groups that help our parks. And as I've gotten up to speed since December when Mary stepped down, I've learned a lot of things about a lot of things. And don't mind me, I've got a little spreadsheet. And this really kind of became top of mind because I noticed either on the website or in the Darien Times or something that there was the cleanup day at Solix Woods a few weeks ago, and I kind of went, I'm surprised I didn't know about that. So, Commission Chair probably should have known about that. So it got me thinking about these friends groups and how they work, and we're very lucky to have them. And what I've learned, and we have a number of new members too. So I just kind of did some looking around the internet, the source of all things, and with the help of Pam, there's 4 friends groups that she was able to identify. From what I could find, the Friends of Solix Woods and the Friends of Woodland Park are very, very active. They're 501c3s, they have, a mission statement, robust websites. I mean, there's a lot of information out there. They plan events, like the event a few weeks ago, et cetera. For instance, the Friends of Solix Woods, the description is that they're a nonprofit organization that cares for Solix Woods on behalf of the Darien Parks and Recreation Commission. So that's great, but what I really, when I got thinking about this, I said, I have no connection to these folks. I've never met them. I've certainly heard Chris Filmer's name many, many times and heard great things about him, but I don't remember my 4 or 5 years on this commission that we've ever had them at our meetings, or if they're caring for them on behalf of our commission, it just felt there was like no connectivity. So that's why I brought this up, and hoping we can brainstorm ideas that we can better address that so that we can connect the different bodies. Friends of Tilly Pond Park, I couldn't
Can I
find.
just interject?
Sure.
I think those 2 properties are really lucky to have 2 organized
Yes.
friends. We're lucky to have one.
Absolutely.
They operate very differently, so as you continue on, perhaps we can talk about that. Chris Filmer is a major factor in that. But the dynamic is very different, I think, right? When we've seen that with Tilly Pond, we saw that with the dog evaluation as each property came through with its concerns as a
Mhm.
community. So I think our experience would be very different property to property.
What do you mean about the dynamics, like, what's the difference?
Just some are more loosely organized, some are more proactive in conservation, some are, you know.
Some don't come out until there's
There's a problem
Yeah,
or
some are,
something that they want
and then
approval
some
on.
are, yeah. So it's not, there's no right or wrong to any of it, they're just different.
I agree, Lori, that we should have a formal relationship because, you know, as I did the Leo projects, we did have a miscue with Woodland Park, and they thought that they could just approve improvements, and we had to kind of clarify that, and I think it doesn't hurt to have them be more, we have a closer relationship and be communicating about things like that. And also, maybe, I'm not sure they needed approval from us, but the Solid Woods cleanup, maybe they could, you know, come and presented it and said, we're doing these things, just to let us know. And it wouldn't have been an approval, but just, like you were saying, a presentation.
Right, and that's my concern, they're great groups, I don't want it to see in any way that I feel anything
We could partner.
incorrect has been done wrong,
Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
and you guys gotta remember, I'm in the risk management business, you know, so it's my mind, it
You're in
just,
the right
it just
spot.
goes.
Good
It
spot.
just goes, but if you have this group that's forming and they're going off and doing things that we didn't want them to
And
do.
also you build the
or-
bridge before you need it, the communication bridge.
Right.
We don't need it now, so why not establish those
Right,
programs?
so,
And I can always put that in my report every month too, so that if we have them in twice a year, say, to do their own formal
right,
speeches or reports, but I certainly could have it in the report, any updates on friends groups.
but ideally personally, what I would like to have happen, but much input, is that at least once a year, we have to decide the appropriate frequency, have the Friends group come in, just like we do with Darien Junior Sailing. We make sure that they come in, they're, you know, they operate in one of our parks, and they tell us what's happening with their organization and their numbers and everything else, to make sure that we have that formal connectivity, and I want your input on what you think the appropriate time frame is. Again, Friends of Tilly Pond Park, I couldn't find as much information on other, they have a Facebook page, but I don't have Facebook. And then I couldn't really find anything on, or did I take it back? I did find information on Friends of Cherry Lawn by linking through. And it's mostly about the community garden, seemed to be really about the garden, but it said something that the garden club sets out the rules for the community garden, and I'm like, again.
I think a lot of those forum clubs have presented over the years, when I've been a part of it, as an issue's come up.
Yeah.
Where they really galvanize, you know, so I think it'd be wonderful, maybe this perhaps would be a way to allow them to have a more formal structure or something like that, you know, somebody we have a contact point.
Would it be better to have all the Friends group in one night,
No.
or?
I wouldn't say so.
I don't know.
Because I think
don't
they
have
each have
it.
different interests, that would be
Okay,
only the.
or just rotate it.
Yeah, I would rotate it, just to keep it, so that we don't spend all night. Maybe or maybe, like, I think that Seltzworths might want to do something closer to spring to publicize what they're doing, and maybe Woodland, it doesn't matter as much, so we'll just have to play. I think Tilly does a lot of holiday, do you guys work together on the
Well, a
holidays?
little
I know
bit. I mean,
did
they spoke at the public hearing when we bought the property over at Oxbridge, because there was maybe a plan to put there. But they also do some of the concept series in the beginning of summer, the end of summer. So you're right. They're much more of, it's the houses that line it, right? And
We
making sure they can block off during
They did the
Halloween. And so
paintings.
I only know this because I live near there and but it's very seasonal.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
It's not this like Woodland Parks kind of view. It's a very, because it's not so much preservation, it's more contained with.
Which Cherry
having
Lawn almost
views.
operates the same, even though the park is bigger, it's almost the
Yeah.
same structure,
Exactly.
yeah.
Well, Cherry Lawn is a little bit more formal because you do sign contracts with the town. And there are definite rules and regulations.
For the plots.
For
Oh,
the
the
plots,
community
in
garden.
terms of when you start to cultivate it, keeping the paths clean.
I
free
saw
of
that. It was
all
pretty
of that. It's very strict. There are 3 or 4 inspections over the course of the summer. And if you fail, you are given a warning, and if you don't fix it, you're out.
Sounds like you got a warning.
Or
they have a warning there.
Or maybe you're inspected.
How to be proactive in terms of attacking the weeds before they just take over and so on. But there was also an initial meeting about a month ago, at the start of the season, basically, as far as letting everyone know how many members there were, the waiting, number of people on the waiting list, et cetera, et cetera.
And Mary Louise, that's done by the Friends group, what you just described. All of that's done by the,
Well, it's all the members of the garden.
got it.
And there's 60, basically.
Yeah.
Which are not all directly neighbors, but,
Yeah,
but a lot of neighbors.
And those aren't necessarily friends of Cherry Lawn.
That's correct.
No,
They're really
It's the
the
garden club.
It's
It's
just,
the
So the
garden
other
club.
time that we've heard as a commission, in my experience, from the Friends of Cherry Lawn neighborhood community, is when we were considering dog issues, when we were separately
Yeah.
considering a split rail fence, or which was a Eagle Scout potential project along. So there have been, not purely the garden, obviously the garden is a major one, but there's been a few different other ones as well.
Well, Cherry Lawn started out with, they fundraised for the playground there.
Right.
So there was a group that did that, and there was a
Were you
501c.
part of that one?
No, I had just moved into town when they finished, and that 501c3 formed, and they closed when they finished. Because to run a 501c3 is very costly, so once they gave the town whatever money was left over, and then they closed their 501c3. And the last time the garden club came to us was when they did a beehive. So we all got honey at that time, but they asked us for permission for putting up beehive.
the beehives, correct.
So that's
Oh,
the
no,
only
no,
time the
they,
garden
no,
club.
then they did a project when you enter on the preliminary trees.
Yeah, they put some, yeah, they did a couple of
They
things.
they have a major charitable work they have to do every 6 years to maintain the garden club's 501c status. They have to do a major event and then contribute $50,000+. So they put in, I don't know, probably a dozen cherry trees into Cherry Lawn.
It was a
as
ton
you-
of money.
Yeah, and as those two little gardens as you walk in, they also, one of the major things which we benefited from is there was a lot of storm damage. And they came in and they took down all the tree stumps. They grind them down and they grassed over. It changed the topography as you drive by. So that was it. Anyway, so sorry, that was all tied into.
No, there's a, yeah,
Yeah.
so it's not, but that's not formal, like, it's not like a friends group, as, you know, like they just, the garden.
Yes.
Right. the garden.
So
But anyway, I
apparently
agree.
then need
I think
connectivity with that as well. So it sounds
Like
like
we need to-
I think
there's
it's a great idea.
general agreement that we should
Yes.
try to better formalize the relationship. It sounds like we probably, maybe on a quarterly basis, get one of the groups in.
And I can schedule them, it doesn't really
And
matter what
schedule, yeah.
order, right?
No.
I think they'd like to have a voice, right?
Yeah.
Or-
Yeah.
Great idea.
The other,
It lets us know they're thinking.
yeah, the other
Concern.
thought that I had was that perhaps it would make sense, other than just have Pam do it, is that one member of the commission, and nobody has to raise their hand tonight, but would be like the liaison, the friends groups or something, and just something that they could just do to reach out and be staying in touch, knowing what's going on, might be the idea. So kind of noodle about these things, but I think building that connectivity, I think is really, I think it's important, just because it's the right thing to do, but also, I think, to protect our commission as well.
Sue Switek used to do it, and the nice thing about her doing it, which was your predecessor, was that if there were any issues, like she could kind of triage, like if it was something that needed to come to commission, or she just needed to say, maintenance, you know, no
Right,
problem. So that was the nice thing, and you know, she's a constant, she's a staff person, it's much easier than to reach a volunteer that meets monthly or something. I don't know, I'm just thinking, just.
And I do have, I am pretty connected right now to
all those
Friends of Selleck's, Friends of Woodland,
Yeah.
and Tilly. We just recently had, well, since December, Jamie was in touch with the Friends of Tilly, and they did that Christmas event with us. And the only one I don't know is Friends of Cherry Lawn. And Jim, are you aware of any other friends that we're not mentioning right now, Friends
I
groups?
think those are the only ones that I remember.
But it's not really the Friends of Cherry Lawn though, really. It's like really the garden club and the community garden, which is like working, but there's
There
no.
was a Friends of Cherry Lawn group. I don't know how active they are, but there are the gardens and others. I remember when we came up, I think it was either 2002 or 4, we were gonna do a big renovation at Cherry Lawn Park, and that's I think really what.
That, there was just a playground first then? Because, I mean, they started the 501c3 to do that whole area. And they raised a ton of money to do it. And they did it for a few years. They did all those bricks
Yep,
and everything.
That was Park House, right?
Yeah, Park House, Park House.
and they might have been affiliated with, there was a group that came out, I remember when we did.
And that's, I think they turned into, I wouldn't be surprised if they morphed into that and became that and then kind of, now we've made our playgrounds, we're done, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, there is a group, I don't know how active they are now, that Friends,
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay, So that's what we'll do, and then maybe, I don't know, do we want to target for maybe June
To have one?
to have one?
Yeah.
Just to get going?
I had even mentioned it to Chris Filmer, and I think
Okay.
he was even willing to put in May. I don't know.
I'm just in terms of managing the agenda, we ran up a
So
public
we can
hearing.
talk about.
Oh, right.
Yeah, okay, we'll talk about that. Okay. And I just think it would be great to meet some of these folks, like Chris Filmer, I've heard his name so many times, I've never met the man.
And
It's
it's just,
just, yeah, it's
He's great.
just, we should,
that's
you
good.
know.
Absolutely.
Listen,
No, we will.
we should know these people, we should, you pass them the phone, you should know.
Yes.
Amen.
Amen, okay. Next, we have update on the various other park improvement projects. We talked about Pear Tree, but there's a lot going on at all of the facilities. It's really, I think Pam's drinking out of a fire hose right now. Anyway, so you know, it's Pam. I've definitely been working on her with a number of these and attended a number of meetings with her. So I guess we'll touch on Wheat Beach for
Yes.
tonight.
So Wheat Beach Short Lane Improvement Project, as you all know, was, we had put a number in our capital improvement project. And it was cut from the budget. And I had continued to go through the process and all the boards to get approvals for the project based on the fact that Weston and Sampson were currently working on the design. And had they done the design, we put the money forward for it, project got cut. So I did reach out to Darien Foundation as well as the Darien Athletic Foundation, and we are currently discussing a possible partnership, and which could be quite exciting. I'm not going to go into any further detail right now. I do have a meeting with them tomorrow, another one, and I'm hoping to, whatever may collaborate with them or come forth with them, I'll have more details for you next month. But it is a very exciting possibility, and so that's kind of in the workings. Update on Diller. Oh, and back to Wheat Beach Short Lane Improvement Project. I do have one, I've finished all my approvals outside of P&Z. So the exciting part is if there happens to be a unique creative collaboration that we can form, I only have to go through P&Z for final approval for that design of the short lane area. But the hope is that we would look at this as a complete project, not just short lane. This is to integrate and to connect both sides of the parcel with paved pathways and a boardwalk, along with the grassy kind of amphitheater type of area that would oversee the patio, the paver patio that Weston Sampson called it, which you've all seen the design for that side of the park. But the whole entire project would be to connect the entire 25 acres of property. Update on Diller property. Diller has had some stumbling points. Some neighbors are still not very happy about some of the plans there. They're still at the EPC, and I have May 1st meeting to go to, as well as I believe May 9th. And I anticipate that the approvals will go through, but until they formally do, I believe they have to go to P&Z, and then they're hoping to get into construction for that project. It really is a very great way, in my opinion, to use this parcel. And I believe the commission, we've talked about this in the past, and you've certainly approved it to go forth. But we're hoping, fingers crossed, that that's going to go through for the get kids, cross-country kids off the road.
I know season starts September.
Yeah, that might be tough.
Yeah, it's fall season.
Update on Highland Farms property. I don't have a lot of detail for you other than the money is still in the budget. It's not been cut from the budget, and we're waiting for the budget to be approved. If the budget gets approved, I'm assuming that construction of those parking lots is exactly what we're looking to regrade, restore, do the 2 parking lots, get them open, and then we'll be able to manage the site.
And how many parking places are there?
There are, I believe, 94 in total. So that is split by 2. And then there'll be overflow parking as well. So our crew has generously put together one area of the parking lot on the far side of the property. But unfortunately, it's such a wet 2 seasons, going into the 3rd season, that it wasn't even agreed upon to use it anymore. It's just became a mud pit. So we did not push to have anything out there in the spring, and nor did P&Z even agree to allow us to use it at that point because it's just too muddy. But the horse show will go on. So that goes beyond the approval process. It is in their contract with the town that they would continue to have that.
When is that again?
That's June. Yeah, 2 weeks in June. And certainly that's been going on for neons, and they've dealt with rain, and they've dealt with a lot of things. So it's not as if that hasn't been a muddy place before. But maybe just needs some other eyes now that it's the town's. So, update on Cherry Lawn Park. Very exciting news. Jim Coughlin and I went out and met a playground company. We researched 3 different companies, and we agreed that, and there's a picture in your packet of the Global Motion piece of equipment, and ironically, that's the same piece of equipment that we put in the capital improvement project a few years back that was cut out of the budget. So it has been ordered. It is going to be a cool purple color.
Purple.
Purple,
Couldn't find blue?
purple and green go well together.
No blue?
And,
Spicing it up.
oh, yeah, it was Jim's idea. And,
Got it.
what does it do? It spins, so.
It's
so-
replacing a spinner.
Yeah, it's a climber and
It's a
spinner.
climber and spinner. So we were originally looking at a climbing net, but when we saw that the Global Motion really is a net and a climber that holds numerous children, but the fun part about it is that it moves. So it is on order.
Pam pulled an audience of kids that came into the office. It was adorable. They all selected it.
What is the age that you think it really works for? Like, what is the age range that we're shooting for with this structure?
Oh, that will go up to 15, up to 15 years old. And you know, right now, the 5 to
How tall
12 unit, we know parents are letting younger than kids on the
Oh,
5 to
yeah.
12 unit as long as they're, supervised.
And where are you going to cite that?
That is going to go in the exact space that we took the merry-go-round out of.
That was
That's to
dangerous.
the left of the
That's getting
playground.
dangerous.
It's a big old empty space in there right now. It just has 2 old climbers that
Yeah,
we're pulling
that's
out,
horrible. Yeah.
and we're putting it there.
I spent a lot
So
of
it's
time.
beyond where the existing
It's-
playground?
It's within the same playground area that already has wood chips in it. It's
Yeah, the
just
one that's not
empty.
enclosed,
Okay.
not the unenclosed, the
The older.
older section. At one point, you were talking about putting a structure in that would make power, remember generate power? Because I remember looking at that and that people in Africa use them to pump water. Remember that one? Anyway. Sorry, I'm surprised you're not gonna make that like, power the bathrooms and stuff.
Wow, that's big
I
time.
love it.
Could
That-
go with
that's
adding
great.
solar panels.
It's like wind power.
Right.
Wind power.
Get those
Think
kids-
about it.
get
All right,
those
so
kids
we're
to
working
work.
on that one.
Oh, no, that's okay. But I remember that was one of the options at one point.
And then the other thing with Cherry Lawn Park, you should see that, we're hoping for that, I would say, in May.
Right.
In May installation, and the Park Pal's remaining money that's been sitting in that account is being used for this.
How much is it?
It is $30,000, and
They left you a nice nut at.
this particular unit is $25,000, but it costs $10,000 to install. So it's a 35. So we used part of the remaining money of Park Pals and $5 additional from our capital playground account.
Do you still have playground money? Playground money,
We
sound?
do, so yes.
Yeah, we left you some money too.
We did. And, I'll go back to that. And Cherry Lawn Park is also another capital improvement project that has not began yet, but that is to put a water aerator in the pond and electricity for that, and possibly to light up the gazebo for
That's gonna be nice.
evening events.
That's great.
So those are still pending. And back to Weed Beach, that particular money you're talking about, Sue, that was left for that is, I met with the same playground company that has Global Motion,
Oh,
and they are gonna put
Play
sunshade,
structures.
over the playground.
So we are doing the sunshade.
Yes.
They wouldn't let us put it in first time around. They said it was too much maintenance.
Well, the interesting thing with this particular, he came up with a good idea. He's not doing individual poles. He's actually using the poles on the existing structure and putting it up from there. And we'd be able to take it down. So if you had individual poles, a lot more difficult to get the height you need. But he's going to the high level of the unit already and connecting it with the poles that are
I
existing.
think it's great.
So, yeah.
So Pam, will it only cover the existing unit then, or will it
It's
actually
not
cover
gonna
the?
it won't cover the whole thing, no. It's gonna provide some necessary shade for the playground area, but it's not gonna, because the sail on that thing is just,
Right.
and it's gonna look like another sail, which is kind
Which
of
is
cool.
cool.
Yeah,
It'll
it's gonna
fit.
fit in really nice, it's gonna
Oh, no, we
be
wanted to
white
do it.
poles and blue shade, or
Mm.
blue shade, or blue poles and white shade. I think it's blue shade,
It'll look really sharp.
I think so too.
So
So
both.
I'm excited about that. And that's it.
Excellent.
Thank you. I really want to commend Pam because I just cannot believe what's been going on in the last couple months
It's a
between
lot.
all of these projects, meeting with organizations to try to fundraise when our funding was cut, the numerous P&Z and EPC and finance board meetings, she's just been juggling so many balls.
Thank you.
I'm very,
Thanks.
very
Well done.
Yeah,
appreciative
yeah.
because
Agreed.
you know, we went from not having any parks projects to all of a sudden, just all of us hitting at once. It's really exciting, but it's, I mean, Mary got out when the getting was good.
I know. This is when all it happens, all the magic happens.
Yeah, so all
Yeah.
the magic's happening now, so I think it's gonna be really exciting, we're gonna have a lot to be proud of, but
Great.
Pam and her team, it's.
Excellent job.
Because we talk probably at least weekly, if not more frequently, over texting or whatever, and she's like, you know, went to this last night, went to that. It's been a lot.
Can I ask one minor question? Something unusual that I saw in your report is that vandalism has been happening a lot. Why do you think that is? Because, I mean, vandalism happens.
Sure.
We don't have a year where it doesn't happen. But it seemed like a lot of signs. Do you think it's like a
Just-
single group of candidates that are?
Well, according to Jim
roaming?
Flynn, our park supervisor, he seems to think that it's the same group of kids doing, and going
From
from
property to property,
and
okay.
doing it. Does he
So
know
it's
that
not
for a
like a
fact? No, but
contagion or
is it
something?
something that he?
It's also spring. You know,
It
spring
does
fever,
happen.
and they
Yeah,
get
and
out
I
there.
honestly haven't seen much since the years I've been here. I know that the lifeguard chair has gotten thrown in the water, and Jim, you could probably speak to if there's any other cases.
Isn't there
in all those
the
years.
cherry lawn, the Louisville had some bench damage one time? I don't remember. Just-
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, there's been, it's pretty
It's happening.
sporadic.
A lot of graffiti usually, like more like graffiti, would you say,
Yeah.
things like that.
Yeah, I mean,
It's not outsized.
no.
I think for the most part, there's very little that I've seen. It really is.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
So now we're on to public comment. Members of the audience
Is there one more question about?
for Pam.
Just generally, so the paddle hut seems really busy here. Just curious, do we have enough paddle huts? Are we at the right number? Just, we built the paddle huts here,
Paddle
paddle courts,
courts.
sorry, paddle huts.
I was like, wow.
I wasn't very comfortable with
I
these
said-
girls.
Yeah, I was gonna say, tell Neil right now, right away.
No, but do we have, and I ask this openly, I don't have any,
Jim's the man to ask.
do you feel like, are they at a good balance?
I think if you ask some of the players, the players say no. I think on weeknights and weekends, we're pretty booked up. So Monday through Thursday, even Friday now, but Monday through Thursday especially, from 7 until 10, pretty much every court is booked. On weekends, we have league play on Mondays and, Saturdays and Sundays from 8 till 11, or 8 till, about 8 till 11, or 8 till about 10, I'm sorry. And then we have a lot of play after that. So we have regular groups that come in and play throughout the weekend, so it is very busy on the weekends and on weeknights. Daytime, not so much.
Paddle
And
parties.
we do have a lot more paddle parties than we used to have. So we typically will have those on Saturday evenings, and the majority of the weeks from October through March are booked by paddle parties. So could we use another quarter or two? Definitely. I think we could use them on weeknights and definitely on weekends.
If we had another one or two, just thinking ahead 10, 20 years down the road, would you want that, is the feedback that they want them to be contiguous because of,
I think
Right.
that would be the way to go, for a lot of different reasons, yeah. If we could somehow put them, join them to the building in the existing courts, that would be ideal for play, for watching, for possible tournaments. But, you know, there's gonna be, there's not the land right here that we could do that. You're
It's all
looking at getting into ledge and hill, and it's,
Well, Tokenique is not up yet if we do get those courts, and that's
Right,
something
yeah,
to consider. That's still pending, and they did all the research about where we could put courts.
right.
Part of that was their consultant, they hired people, and the only spot was the spot they picked for the courts that they are trying to work with the town on. So, we don't even have to spend, you know, we've already spent the money to do that, so.
How about pickleball courts? Are we doing anything more with pickleball?
Well, we were just, you know, it's funny, we were just talking about the pickleball.
It's hot, right?
It's hot, yeah. So we
way hot.
use, the gym at Town Hall is rented by the senior center on pretty much a good chunk of Tuesdays and Thursdays and a little bit on Wednesdays. So there's the inside play, the outside play. We have all 4 courts up at Cherry Lawn, and purchased nets for them as well. So they, you know, are trying to encourage it that way. Jamie's added pickleball lessons. So we've tried to encourage
To respond.
to
And are those full, right? Did you say they're full, the football?
Some of the lessons are full. I mean,
Some are, we were seeing a lot more feedback for the more beginner level. So we kind of switched the more advanced classes down to that. So we're expecting next, we had a waiting list for some of those classes.
Great.
that'll grow up. Yeah.
So we're hoping that maybe some of those will filter over. But a couple of them have a waiting list and then some of
Do
them.
you get a paddle with it? Or do you have to buy your own to start? Don't you have to have a
Pickleball
paddle?
racket?
Yeah.
We generally like ask people to bring them, but we'll have some if they don't have a
Because
racket.
that's what, I was like gonna do it, and I was like, oh, I don't have a paddle.
don't let that hold you back.
Go out there. No, I mean, because I know that for the kids' lessons, they give you a tennis racket, you know, that's how my kids got their first racket.
It's the gateway drug.
So that's why I was wondering, if there was, just because it's such an interesting, you know, thing, you know, I mean, not that I want to take it home, but to like take a risk and not know what I need to buy.
Right.
It's very challenging.
Yeah, so you come to the first lesson, they'll have paddles for you, and then, you know,
There you go.
then you can buy them. So,
Okay.
So just a quick question, I mean, are you guys seeing like an increasing demand? Are people asking about it and looking, you're seeing an increase in the number of people that are interested in it, or? Because it does seem like it's pretty popular. I don't believe it, it seems like.
yeah, I think
super
the popularity is growing.
Oh, it's number one growing sport in the
Right.
world, right?
Yeah, and
Wow.
that's great.
And I think the fact that they offer classes now
That's-
Right.
That's
has
helpful.
opened up the door.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to do a little promo, there's something very interesting because I don't know if it's called the kitchen sink. There's just this weird terminology that comes with the game that you could, I mean, 'cause I think you just do such a nice job with. Ever play a sport where you got the kitchen sink? I mean, you could do, you know, you do your little teasers.
Oh, that's great.
You don't go there,
Wait
no,
a minute, a sport with a kitchen sink?
That's great, I love
But
it.
it does sound like soon we may not have enough pickleball courts, and that may be something that we have to figure out.
That's a possibility. There are some
I
towns.
mean, if you guys are successful with what
Right,
you're doing
and
now.
there's other towns that have pickleball only
Right.
courts, so
Yeah.
is
There you
that
go.
coming? I don't
A
know.
growing sport.
Maybe somebody would come
Put it on the
forward
radar.
from
In
the
New
pickleball
Canaan,
community
why
and
New
maybe
Canaan?
to build ones.
Oh, there you go.
Another project. Okay, exactly. No more
Where?
projects for the.
Well, I think this might be a good time for me to say publicly the work that these two have done. Because the budget speaks for itself, and we just did, I had a Board of Selectmen quarterly meeting and ran a report from July 1st, 2018 till today versus the same months the year before, and our programming money has increased by 98,000.
Wow, that's
And
amazing.
it's a big number, and it goes to show what kind of work is going on in the office.
What is that percent increase of?
I didn't do the percentage.
How much is that? Was it $1 million that you know, that you said?
It was a 60,
We'll go with that.
66.
Yeah, it was $1 million.
Yeah. It was $98,000 increased, programming money, it was 66,000. Oh, that was programming, so I misspoke there. It's 98 as a whole, because that, the increase in beach permits, programming, facility rental, those were all increases. budget, so it was really good to see. So even with Jeannie, I mean, with paddle parties, you know, they, $8,800 would have paddle parties from, say, October through March.
That's nice.
And then building facility rentals is getting close to our goal of, you know, I think we're up at 9,000, we haven't hit the season yet, we're looking for 15, see if we get to increase 15. So there's just a lot of good stuff happening in the office. And, you know, because of these two staff, it's great.
Jim, how long have you been with Parks and Rec now? I mean, I think you've been here as long as I have.
18 years.
Okay, so a little longer.
A couple, yeah, just a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, I would agree, I mean, I haven't been on quite as long as this one, but this is firing on all cylinders, and you guys are just incredible, so thank you. And it's individual efforts and then combined, it's just really, we see it, like as somebody in town and then somebody here at the table, it's really wonderful. You get the great feedback, great feedback.
Great job.
It's great.
It's a lot of work
I
goes
can
behind
feel
the
it too.
scenes, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
You really can, I can feel it too, that
Yeah.
people are excited.
Yeah.
And it feels, I
There's
can feel the
enthusiasm.
difference in the last few years, it really feels good. Shall I go right into
Yes, go
mine?
ahead and
Yeah.
do a report so we can wrap up.
Yeah, that's fine. So I already touched on the global motion, and I touched on the security gate hut, and I think what I'm gonna do is, because everything's pretty self-explanatory here, is to hand it over to Jim and Jamie about community events, and we'll go from there.
Okay,
So basically, like Jamie, I just put in the report about the Daddy Daughter Dance
oh,
and Discovery Trails Day, which I put the flyer in. So if you want to just touch on that, the success of it.
Daddy Daughter Dance was great. I wasn't sure if we'd surpass our numbers last year. We had such a great turnout last year, and we did. It went really well. We brought in a nice chunk of revenue. It was, I don't know, it's just such a fun event. I don't have actual kids, but they're
The fur baby.
yeah, I have plenty of fur babies. But no, it was such a really fun event to work and watch the dads, and the kids are so cute, and we amped up. It seemed like last year the dances where we kind of encouraged them to get out and do stuff together was great, and then when they start playing music, it was like immediate, it was like a 6th grade dance where like everyone immediately separated. So this year we kind of kept that going, and it was just so cute with the conga lines and the limbos and all kinds of stuff. So it was a great event, and we did bling this year, so all the kids got to pick out bling. That was fun. And then they were like gypsy children. At one point, they were like digging through empty boxes of like, there's no more bling. Everyone got some, but yeah, I don't know. It was a lot of fun. So I don't know. It's a lot of fun, and we might do some theme stuff in the future. So it's just a really fun event. But
The numbers were great.
Yeah, I mean, these numbers are amazing.
yeah, we had 142 couples, and then that's one daughter, and then we had 28 with 1 or 2 extra daughters,
Wow.
and yeah, it was a lot of people in there. Yeah, the photo booth line was out of control, so that's all they could yeah, it was great.
It's amazing.
That's so great.
So next we have Trails Discovery Day for Sellex and Dunlap Woods, and Chris Wilmer's the lead on that event, and we're partnering to help them in any way you can. There's a lot of community organizations involved, and most people are doing activity tents and stuff. Parks and Rec will have an activity tent, I'll be there. There's also music and food truck, and they're gonna have like their own like a challenge course for the little kids, and there's gonna be a zip line and all different little challenges they have to complete to get like the completion badge. There's archery, all kinds of fun stuff, and the Boy Scouts are very involved. So yeah, it's gonna be a really fun event, so definitely should come. We didn't get to do the event, I know, last year. I'm not sure the year before either because of the construction on the residence.
Yeah.
So it's a historically annual event that they're excited to bring back, so definitely should come out and support. And then,
On the heels.
yeah, and then right behind that, we have Lee Beach Fest, no big deal. So we've expanded the hours and pushed it up this year, so it's gonna be from 12 to 7 this year. The Kids Cove has been sponsored by the Darien Foundation, so we're really excited about that. We have 3 live bands lined up, 2 local bands, and our headliner is a Bruce Springsteen cover band that we think is really cool, so we're really excited about that. The stage will be back on the beach this year, everything will take place on the beach. We'll have the hot food vendors back, we'll have a lot of other vendors as well, crafted business vendors.
And we're moving the food court
That's a good idea.
front of the
Yes.
stage.
That's a great idea.
We're changing our setup a little bit. We've changed it every year, so we'll eventually figure out the best way to make it work. But this one we think makes a lot of sense, and it kind of gets everything right there in your face when you come in. So, and the sports shops sponsored the stage with the music, and the Masons are going to be on site doing this CHIP program, which is really cool. Helping, it's like a missing child program, so that helps police find missing children faster. It's really cool, and that'll all be for free. And our presenting sponsor is Rings End again, so we're very thankful to Rings End for being our sponsor every year now. And yeah, so that's that. And then we got the fireworks coming up after that. So I think we locked in our band for the 4th of July fireworks today. So it's a 90s rock band, so I thought they were really cool. So hopefully everyone else enjoys it. It's just a little different. And we'll see what else we'll have going on with the fireworks. We're thinking about some other fun things that I don't know if we can make it happen. But yeah, so I think that's what we have right now.
Jim, are there any things that are going on that are your top programs that you're finding that you're lining up right now? Or are you still just lifeguard?
Yeah, so we're in as Pam said, Jamie's had a lot of new programs, which has been great. You can see our registration numbers are up from the winter 20%. Our spring registration's up as well. So tennis lessons are always big, and paddle tennis lessons. Pam talked about us. We have a lot of good people that work for us too. In the paddle building here, and our lifeguarding staff, and other places that you don't even see supervisors that you don't see. So we're fortunate that we have folks in the office who are really good. Lifeguards this is probably one of the largest number of new lifeguards I've had to hire since I've been here. We have about 24 lifeguards. Some are part-time, some are subs, some are work 40 hours a week. We have 10 out of 24 going back. So that's not what we usually expect. So we're having to hire almost 2/3 of the new staff. So almost. So that's kind of what we're doing right now. And we'll be ready for Memorial Day weekend. We did a lot of training and beforehand, and we'll be ready to go on May 25th. That's what's going on.
Great stuff.
Wrap it up.
That's really great. Yeah. Thank you guys.
Great for you.
It's exhausting, okay. I have also attended a number of events, and I would say the common theme really has been environmental issues. What I learned after stepping in this role for Mary, that you automatically become an ex officio member of the Harbor Commission. So I have now attended a couple of Harbor Commission meetings, which has been very interesting. Attended a program at the Darien Library, which was what was called the Pollinator Pathway, which was co-sponsored by a number of local groups, including the Garden Club, the Tree Conservancy, the Library, the Darien Gardener Center. And it's a national effort, but it's definitely in Connecticut. But it's all about returning to native plantings, reducing the use of pesticides and things that are killing off the insect populations, which affect the birds and different types of animals, and really creating, like birds migrate. The guy said, there has to be, they fly, and there's got to be enough food for them to stop and eat along the way. And if the insect population doesn't sustain itself all along the East Coast, well, the birds don't have the food that they need to migrate. So it was very scientific talk. But following that meeting, Pam and I met with two of the people from the Garden Club, because they're very interested in having Parks and Recreation really partnering with them, thinking about participating in the pathway. So as we're doing plantings, they already talked to us about not mowing down milkweed, because that's great for pollination. They talked about how wonderful dandelions are, which didn't thrill me personally, but apparently dandelions are very good for insects. So they really want to partner and keep talking to us to make sure that as we're doing work in the parks, that we're thinking about using native plantings and things that will support the pollinator pathway efforts. Also, when
we're all nodding on this side of the table, maybe you're nodding on that side too, but I think you've got an enthusiastic bucket.
I have one of those stakes on my property.
Yeah.
Pollinator pathway. on my
Pollinator
house.
pathway. I also went to another event at the library, which was sponsored by Save the Sound on rising sea level, and Michelle definitely referenced that issue earlier, and it's quite frightening. I mean, when you really hear what the predictions are going out to like 2050 and beyond, and the importance of communities developing strategies to preserve their shoreline remediation strategies. So again, these are things that as we're doing all of our work, we really need to be thinking about keeping top of mind. But with Pam to some of the meetings to solicit funds for some of the parks. So really, in just these few months, there's been a lot going on, but the pieces that really pull us together is, really stuck around, like the Harbor Commissioner, when I was at the meeting, said, can you please ask the Park and Recreation Center, they're mowing the town hall field, to not mow all the way down to the river because they wanted what's called a riparian buffer, which I didn't know what it was, but now I do, it's basically tall grass, to make sure that any, chemicals that might be used aren't running into the river, although I've been told we don't use chemicals, but they're very keen. The Harbor Commission is that we are doing things in our parks that are sustainable and not damaging the coastal water. So all of these pieces seem to be knitting together. I think they're themes that we need to be really thinking about and keeping top of mind as we do all of our work. And then I just wanted to mention some upcoming meetings. The Diller hearings are May 1st. Mike, I think you're going to cover that for me because I'm going to be out of town next week. And then on Kinsey on May 7th, and I'll be there with Pam, but any of you are always welcome to attend those. Another meeting at the Harbor Commission, we had a speaker for what's the Connecticut Blue Plan, and this is basically, it's a mapping of the waters of Long Island Sound. It's not so much the coastline, but it's the waters. And this was mandated by the state because they basically want to have records of all the different types of activities that go on the Sound, both commercial and recreational, so that as they get applications for uses of the Sound, whether it would be, in an extreme case, would be a bridge from Bridgeport to Port Jeff, but the other example you brought up is now they're getting more applications for kelp farms, which are fantastic for the Sound because they help with nitrogen. But they need to know how it would be impacted. So, is the kelp farmer trying to put something where it's a really popular oyster bed, or where, Stanford Yacht Club runs its races on Wednesday night and the little pots would be in the way of the racing field. So there will be a public hearing on the Blue Plan at the library on May 9th. And they're trying to get public input on that. Terry Wood actually, just if you're on her mailing list, just sent out a notice about it as well. So that's coming up if anybody's interested. And then the RTM meets on May 13th to vote on the budget. I think that's the right date. So I definitely hope to be there. It's like a business trip. But it would be good to have representation from the commission there as well. I mean, I just to the extent there's any discussion on, I think the biggest item might actually be the Highland Farm amount, but whatever, so.
And I think the Parks and Rec, Parks employee, full-time employee has sparked some interest.
Sparked some interest as
That's why I
well.
haven't heard any negative.
So those are just some upcoming meetings that, and I think for next year with the budget meetings this year, I don't think we really have the schedule, but I think certainly when the selectmen are discussing our budget and whatever, I think it would be good if we have representation at the meetings or something. Think about for next year, so that if there's questions are there. I mean, this sort of short lane got cut, and none of us were there to like raise our hand and say that, whatever. So I think we'll want to think about that going forward. Okay. So that's it. So there's been a lot going on. And that is all I have for this evening.
I know you did mention at one point we wanted to do a walkthrough with everybody.
Yes. a walkthrough.
So we may want to maybe put that on our agenda to pick a date next month.
Yeah, we'll probably have to do that on a weekend, whether it's gonna work.
And you know, maybe we could always push that off till September, because then it'd be right before the budget, so that if we all get a plan to walk through parks, we get a feeling for capital items that are necessary.
Maybe we should do that, maybe we should make that a September item. I think it's gonna be hard to start big, I know my weekends in May are like
Yeah,
out of control.
I think that would be more appropriate while we're looking at each park.
Can I suggest an item for discussion maybe at the next meeting,
Mhm.
which is just do a review of how the dog policy worked this winter? I just think maybe a review of what maybe our concerns were in advance, see how they were vetted, how we'd either respond or structure it for next year, or eliminate or encourage, expand, whatever the options are.
Is that?
Could we maybe do that maybe next month?
Yeah, I think that's great, sure.
I have one new business item. Look into that.
Well, we're up to new business,
Okay.
so we'll move to new business.
Great. Can I offer something on the pantry on the building committee? So just quickly, I'd like to thank Adele Connor, who's been serving in the capacity of alternate on the building committee for a few meetings, and Cheryl Russell's absence, and welcome Cheryl back. So welcome back, and thank you so much, Adele. And Adele is in the role of a standing alternate, so for any of the members who...
That's going to be around.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Okay, that was it for me.
I think that's it. I have been working on, Pam's had a lot going on, putting together a calendar, and the idea is just to have like, we know certain months we have to start talking about the budget, and certain month of the year we have to put the fee, and I went back and looked through all agendas, and I'm starting to populate it, then we might put the Friends meetings on there or whatever, so that it kind of gives us a plan of work, so things like that, so if we say, okay, once a year, we know we need to meet with junior sailing, we have to talk about whether we're gonna, re-up the dog on the winter, just instead of like, oh yeah, we gotta do this. So I'm kind of working on adding to that. When I get a little further along, run it by Pam, then we'll have it at one of the meetings, and then we can add to it. So it's as much for me as anything, just otherwise I can forget. It's on the spread, it's gotta be on the spreadsheet. So that's in process. So that's all I had. So we're up to 9. So we're ready for a motion to adjourn. Nobody wants to adjourn?
So moved.
Just kind of spread the wealth.
I'll second